And the truth is, if you understand sales, if you understand the marketplace and understand human nature, speed to sale is the number one thing that you can do. Like, you have to figure out what is the fastest way I can get somebody who is a lead to actually buy from me, to actually become a client. Hello and welcome to another amazing guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and I always lead in with that guest interview, and then sometimes I put in the amazing. And I don't know if you guys are picking up on that, but how would I know it's amazing if it's the intro before the conversation, right? Today, I know it's going to be amazing because the guest that I have on the show is absolutely amazing, spectacular. One of the people in the legal industry that I have gotten a really close connection with. I really love not just what he does, but I love the way he is leading by example and stepping into life and living life to the fullest. And what do I call living life to the fullest? It's no secret. I'm a family man. Living life to the fullest means being an amazing husband, being an amazing father, or mother to your children. So it would be husband or wife. This is a guy on the show, and so I'm gonna not confuse the issue with husband and wife. But um, Jordan Ostroff was here on the podcast back in 2000. We had him. The show title of the show was I actually should have had that open. Everybody Needs to Eat Lunch with Jordan Ostroff. And that was episode 72. You can find it at profitwithlaw.com/072. We're at 400 something, like 430, 40, 50, somewhere around there in episodes. And it's been a long time since we had Jordan on the show, and a lot has happened in between. As a matter of fact, back in 2000, let's see. I imagine Benji was 2 years old, probably,
Yeah.
when we did that recording. So he didn't even know what kind of deep conversations he'd be having with his son. But if you follow him on Facebook, you get a first front row seat into that dynamic, and that kid is really smart. And I love just watching that whole thing unfold, that whole process, as Benji grows and Jordan is there to be there for his son, which so many lawyers struggle with that. So many lawyers are just like going through the motions of life, um, but not being present because we're focusing on our firm. And if we really think about why we created the firm in the first place, why did I decide to create my own business? If we dig deep, it probably was to create a better life for yourself. And are you really living that better life? Whether you're a year into the process, whether you're 20 years into the process, you have to ask yourself, do I really feel like I'm living the best version of my life that's possible? And if not, why? If I created my own business and I make my own decisions, I should be living my best life. Why am I not? And I think that's what Jordan wanted to jump into when he said, "Love Your Law Firm," a new book that he just put out in earlier this year. And I'm a little bit late to the party in having him on here. We were leading up to our Law Firm Growth Summit at the time the book was released, and I am hoping that with this interview, you guys are all going to run to Amazon, buy your book, and he's going to get a nice big uptick in sales. I purchased it back in April of 2024. So I imagine that's when it was released. Love Your Law Firm, a roadmap to the law firm you always wanted. And I love that whole concept. I love the idea that when we're creating a business, it needs to be something that we love. It needs to be something that we wake up every day excited to be working on. And if we do that successfully, then chances are we'll be able to have the full picture. We'll be able to have the life that we want too, because all good decisions on the law firm side lead to really good decisions on the family side. So, Jordan Ostroff, really good friend of mine. Um, Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me or having me back, man. It has been a long, I mean, been a long time for the show. Obviously, Law Firm Growth Summit, we've hung out in person a couple times, so it hasn't been 4 years for us. It's been 4 years for this.
Yeah, and next time you come to New York, you got to come check out the new digs, which we just moved, and really excited about our house and our monster playroom. So it'll be like amazing for Benji to come hang out in. Um, but we're also completely redoing our backyard, which is a whole nother story. But let's jump into a conversation here. What propelled you or motivated you to write the book Love Your Law Firm? Like what was the impetus? Everybody has a book in them, I believe. But why was that your book?
Well, because honestly, it started as me writing about how much I hated my law firm as, therapy for myself. And thankfully, that story, I guess, has a happy ending. I'm not dead. The law firm's not closed. So a happy middle or whatever you want to call it. And so that became the part of the book is like, how can I get people through that terrible stuff as quickly as possible to get to the nice stuff that I worked myself through over. Oh, geez. So the firm will be 8 years old, 9 years old this year. So somewhere in that time frame, I went from negatives to positives.
Okay, so let's look at the negative side. I'm a very positive person. I'm half a glass half full kind of guy. Optimism is a word that's I mean it's one of our core values here at Profit with Law. But let's start on the dark side of it, right? So why did you hate your firm, or why do people hate their firm? And then we'll talk about how to cross over to loving your firm. But what are the main reasons why somebody might not be in love with their firm?
Yeah, well, so I opened the book with this question of like, do you actually want to be a firm owner? And I don't care if you are thinking about opening your firm or you've had a firm for 5 years or 10 years, like truly having that question, because I think so many of us get wrapped up in this concept of, well, I've already got a business, or I hate where I'm working now, or something like that, without really thinking about how if you want to be a great lawyer, don't own a law firm. Go be a lawyer for somebody else. It's from E-Myth Revisited, right? Like if you want to make pies, you don't open the pie shop. You work for somebody else. And so like you really have to think about what are you trying to get out of life work wise and figure out what makes the most sense for you, even if you've already had a firm for 10 years or 20 years or whatever it is, like I don't care if you drastically change what you're doing. I care if you keep doing the same thing when you hate it over and over again for the rest of your life. That's where I'm going to be disappointed.
Yeah, you know what? It's so true because so many people don't approach their law firm as an owner. And that's the challenge that I'm seeing with my clients. And I did a talk on this on the Law Firm Growth Summit. I opened up my opening presentation was basically switching your mindset from being an attorney to being an investor in your business. And if you're not willing to invest financially in the growth of your business, it's going to be very difficult to grow beyond yourself. So you'll be stuck in that solo attorney phase. And that all comes back to that original question. Like, if do you actually want to own a law firm? And painting the strokes the way that you're painting it, like it's no different than saying, do you want to own an auto body shop or do you want to own a bakery? Right? Like once you say I want to own something, the actual business you own doesn't matter. The only reason for it to be a law firm versus an auto body shop is because you have an expertise in law, so you understand the business better. But that should just be enough for you to understand who you should be hiring and how you should be marketing and, how your overall business should be structured. But the reality is that the longer that if you're the firm owner, the longer that you hold on to doing the legal work, the longer it's going to take you to grow your firm to any level that's going to make you feel fulfilled or happy. And there's my friend Allie Katz, she likes to say that there's different models in the legal business. And, one of the models is to be a solo and to just decide that I'm going to work for myself and I'm just going to fill my plate with the work that I do. And that's it. And I have no aspirations to grow further. And I disagree with her on that. In other words, I don't believe that that is a model. I believe that anybody who's a solo has no aspirations of going beyond themselves, essentially has just created a paycheck for themselves. They do not have a business. And when we're talking about growing a business, we're talking about creating something that doesn't require you, creating something that will run whether you're there or not. And that doesn't happen on day one, but eventually that should be the goal. I had Mike Michalowicz at one of our summits talk about his book Clockwork. And in that book, the whole concept is, how do I get to the point where I could take a 4 week vacation? What allows you to take a 4 week vacation is that really nothing in the business relies on you. Otherwise, you cannot go away for that length of time. So I love that you open the book with that, to just kind of like, hey, look, you got to do some deep search and say, hey, do I want to be the owner of a firm? In other words, do I want to be a business owner? And if the answer is yes, then what, Jordan?
Well, then you start getting intentional about what that looks like. I love the analogy that Gino Wickman uses in Rocket Fuel, where he talks about that visionary and integrator as two puzzle pieces. Here, I think you're more the center puzzle and you get to design the entire rest of those pieces around you. But if you're not intentional about what you want, you have no idea what to say yes to and in what order and what to say no to, and when things that didn't make sense 2 years ago do make sense now. So you have to be intentional.
Okay, so you want to own your firm, you get intentional with how you're building your firm. What allows you to cross into that divide, the other side of the divide, where I'm loving my firm? Is it just executing and putting the right pieces in place so that now things are happening? Like what's the magic formula to getting to the love your law firm part?
So, listen, if you are designing your firm from scratch, it's a little bit different. So, I think most of the people listening to this have a firm in some manner. So, look, for right now, you are acting reactively. You are reacting to the situations. You have to make sure you make cash flow. You have to make sure you get everything done before the court deadlines. You have to get all these things done. So, what we need to do is we need to take some extra time and start building proactively. Now we can get ahead. We can build systems in advance of hiring people so that they have an easier transition. We can design your week proactively instead of you just having to open up your email at 9 o'clock in the morning and respond to every fire. That proactive part, that's where you're going to start to find the love of your firm, because you can actually do things in advance of the outcomes, whereas reactively, you're just trying to avoid the negatives. Here we can work towards the positives.
Yeah, I love that. And it's interesting because your um your focus on that side of the conversation is on their time. And what's interesting is that my background, I'm a money guy, right? My financial background, and my focus is on the financial resources. So there's two resources that we have available to us and in our firm: time and money. And they're both finite. And if we recognize that the key to business is creating more time and creating more money, like that is what business is all about. Now, how do you create more time? It's not just time management, which I think we're going to jump into and talk about. It's buying the time of others. When you hire a staff member, you're essentially buying 40 hours a week from them, or whatever the work week looks like for you. And you're adding that to your inventory of time available for legal services and whatever else your firm does. And then money, when you are selling your services, you're bringing money in the door, and hopefully you're paying your people and all of the other expenses less than the money coming in. And and the difference is where you make money. So you might only be able to make a certain amount of money off of selling your paralegal's time, but then you bring on an attorney and you can make even more off of that. And that's where like the leverage begins. And then the bigger your staff gets, in theory, if you're doing it right, then the more money you're making. And therefore, the more time you can buy if you want with that money, but also the more you get to enjoy the outcome of your business. And I think that this is something I'm really passionate about right now, which is most firm owners, and this is specifically for people who are still solo, right? Like if you're in that solo camp, it almost is a trap, right? Or it is a trap actually, which is you don't have enough time and you don't have enough money to create the next version of your firm. It's impossible. Like Clio Legal Trends report that gets released every year. They did one in 2019 or 2020 where they surveyed 2,000 solo firm owners. And the average solo firm owner is billing 2.1 hours a day and collecting 1.8 hours a day. Put that in contrast to an attorney on your staff. If you hire an associate, all they're doing is billable legal work. They should not be doing anything else. Everything else gets delegated to somebody else, right? If they're human and they take a lunch break and they have bathroom breaks and coffee breaks and whatever, we should be getting 6 hours a day of billable work out of them. That's not a stretch. That's not crazy. That's treating them like a normal person. They should be producing that for our firm. Well, that's 3 times what you can do as an attorney in your firm. 3 times. That means that if you think that you're going to be ready to hire somebody when you're doing a third of the work that they're going to do, financially, you'll never be ready for that. And that's the thing where, like, you have to have this shift. Like, if I want to get somebody's time and I want to execute on that, and there has to be an investment made. And the investment's both time and money, right? Like Jordan is talking about, hey, you got to start taking time to be the owner of your business. But it's almost impossible when it's just you and you're fully booked for you to even think about taking an hour and working on your business, right? The faster that you can deploy another attorney in your firm, the faster you can deploy a paralegal, the faster you can deploy having somebody else do your marketing for you, the faster you're going to have the flexibility to be able to start having time to spend working on your business. Any thoughts on that, Jordan?
Yeah, I mean, look, what is it? History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. Is one of my favorite quotes that I had to take a second to remember. But like it's like think of an assembly line. Your law firm is that car being made. And instead of having one person do everything the whole way down the line, people can take their spots in the chain. So you can focus on, let's say you love doing the consultation. So stay in sales, make some marketing vision, outsource that to a team, have lawyers who can and paralegals who can fulfill the work afterwards. And now you get that many more reps in the consultations. And now you have that much more effort to spend learning how to be a better salesperson instead of having, 15 minutes to read this one article on sales and having to stay up on case law and checking out every judge's specific rules to their courtroom for every motion you file. Like there's just no way to do all of this, but by focusing, you can get that much better and you can find people who are even better than you at some of the other parts that you get off your plate. And now the entire business is better. So now clients are happier and you're happier and the employees are happier because they're not doing 17,000 things for 2 seconds here and 15 minutes there and whatnot. It's so much better for everybody and society and your family and the clients. It's just wild to me.
So, in your opinion, Jordan, when somebody's, going through these growth phases, let's just assume that they've got the capital in place, they're making the moves, they're hiring people, right? So you hire an attorney, you hire a paralegal, you hire a legal assistant. Are they hiring a salesperson too? Where should the owner be spending their time? Like in an ideal situation, I'm not talking about when they're at 10 million, but
Right.
when they're on the path to 1 million to 2 million in revenue, and we have people executing in those positions, what's the best use of the owner's time?
I'm going to give you the ultimate lawyer answer, right? It depends. I mean, and honestly, like I delved into this a little bit more at the Law Firm Growth Summit. You were so nice to give me the opportunity to present on how to have a life. Like that is the presentation. So part of it, I break down like what are the four most common jobs at a law firm? You can be the business owner, you can be the marketer, you can be the salesperson, you can be the lawyer. And so I think everybody needs to kind of throw out the lawyer one at long term for your law firm. So the question becomes, of those other three, are you wanting to truly be the firm owner? Is that the job that you want forever? Do you want to do some sales? Do you want to do some marketing? And then you hire the rest of those situations. So if you are naturally good at generating leads, then you might hire an intake coordinator and a lawyer and a legal assistant. If you are really good at the consultations, now you might hire a marketing company to get the leads into you so you can do the close rates. If you really want to be the business owner, then you need to have somebody do the marketing, somebody do the sales, somebody do the work. You set the vision overall. So you really have to figure out your answer. And look, your answer can change. So a lot of my clients, the last thing that they get out of the day to day is sales. It's easy for them to find a marketing company. It's easy for them to find a lawyer. We build the systems for the work. And the last thing they do is that actual sales consultation. Why? Because they understand why their firm matters more than anybody else. Because that might be the hardest thing to convey for so many of them. So we design everything else, and then they can focus on that process. So now when they bring in that intake coordinator, that salesperson, that person can shadow them on 20 calls, on 30 calls, on 40 consultations, instead of grabbing your best paralegal and saying like, hey, you need to do consultations tomorrow, and there's no training on it, but just tell them, the great results that you've gotten before, because there's so many other things going on. Like, it's all about that focus, allowing the lawyer to do what they do best and what they enjoy most until that's a detriment to the company.
Yeah, I love that. And specifically about around intake, one thing that's really important is to really separate the fact that you are an attorney from the sales process, right? Like a sales call, we call it a consult, but it should not be a legal consult. Like if you're providing legal advice on that conversation, that should be something that is paid for or they're already engaged to be a client for. And a lot of a lot of attorneys have a hard time wrapping their heads around that. Like, how do I sell the solution if I'm not telling them what the solution is? And if we look in the marketplace for anything else, you don't ever buy something without already having the answer, right? Like you're buying the thing that's going to give you the result that you need, but you're doing it on faith of their marketing, right? That thing, that product or that service is going to give you what you want. And when we do a good job of separating those, what it ends up happening is that you can start to sell without providing any sort of legal advice and really catch yourself when you are, because when you hire that intake person, 9 times out of 10, it's a non-attorney, right? Which means they're not giving legal advice. So how could they replicate what you've been doing if you've been doing something that they cannot do? So that's really like at when you're thinking about, okay, this is, I'm gonna start thinking about handing this off. That's the exercise you need to do. Um,
Can I
Jordan,
chime in on that a bit?
yeah, of course.
So look, here's the thing. Nobody actually wants to hire you or me or anybody. Like, nobody gets up in the morning and is like, man, I want to spend $5,000 on an estate plan today. So there's some problem that they are trying to get you to solve. And so when it comes time for that consultation, look, can I help you? Can I prove to you that I'm a good fit to help it? And what's it going to take for me to take this problem away? And so the more that we get into, well, in your specific case, yada this and yada that, the more they're going to lose something, instead of, hey, look, we only do personal injury. These are some recent examples we've got. This is what we focus on. And, we're going to take a percentage at the end. So it's nothing for you today. The faster you get that information, the more they will come back to you with what actually matters, instead of lawyers who do this weird, like 40-minute legal analysis of the situation. And the client's like, can I just give you X dollars and not have to worry about any of the specifics? So it's always interesting to me that what we think of as a value add is actually a detriment to the client who just wants to solve a problem with some amount of money.
Yeah, and the truth is, if you understand sales, if you understand the marketplace and understand human nature, speed to sale is the number one thing that you can do. Like you have to figure out what is the fastest way I can get somebody who is a lead to actually buy from me, to actually become a client. And we put all these extra steps in the way, assuming that they need to go through that. The reality is if your phone rang and on the other side of the phone, you have somebody who had an injury or is, was arrested for DWI, or they're going through marital issues and considering divorce, any situation, or even the estate planning situation, right? They're when they're reaching out to you and saying, "Hey, I have a problem," that's the moment to sell to them. right? That's the moment, like you can immediately have a conversation with them, explain to them why you're the best solution for them, explain to them what the process is, and get them to start, like get them signed up. There's no reason for them to have to, okay, we got the lead in, now let's schedule a consult, and now let's, now that we had a consult, let's schedule a legal consult. Like we create these extra steps that are completely unnecessary. Now, it might be necessary because you don't have somebody to answer the phone right then and there. You don't have the salesperson on standby. That's another part of the conversation. But when even in estate planning where you're going to say, okay, how do I even sell them something? I don't even know what I'm selling them. Do they need a will? Do they need a trust? Like we don't know what it is that we're selling. Great. So sell them the consult. Sell them that legal consult. Charge for that legal consult and have them come with all of the information. And, different people call it different things, whether it's a wealth planning session or, whatever you want to call it. But and you can have whatever you're charging for that go towards the entire engagement of whatever you're going to sell them, but at least you're making the sale. As the moment that they choose you as their attorney and they give you $1, it completely changes the nature of the relationship. And now you've made the sale. They're a client of yours. Now it's just a matter of selling them the right thing afterwards. Same thing with any of the examples I gave. Like, okay, maybe I don't know exactly which representation you need, but you need our representation. We're the right fit for you. We're the right firm for you. Here's why. Let's get started. Have you signed this paper? Have you put this deposit down? Whatever it is. And then we'll book you with an attorney and we'll make sure that we have the right product for you.
Totally agree.
All right. So, Jordan, I've got people on my team, right? I'm trying to get to living my best life. Efficiency is something that we may not focus on as we're assembling the pieces, right? How important is efficiency, and where do you think law firms have their biggest black hole when it comes to time management?
Ooh, good question, man. So look, I get caught up on all of the bars talk about access to justice, right? Like it's super important for us to allow access to justice. Well, the flip side of that is law firms that can make enough money to stay open. And so like the more efficient you are, the more you can give people access to justice. I especially in criminal defense, talk to so many criminal defense attorneys that truly care about the work that they do, that want to do pro bono and low bono work and help people out through really serious situations. Well, guess what? If you're being paid by the clients that you actually want to be paid 100% by, it's so much easier to do that. So I think like this whole efficiency thing, we get caught up in this weird, like selfless realm of, hey, we got to charge the client as little as possible and we got to do this and that. But ultimately, like that efficiency is how you can be profitable on situations for people that can't afford a $10,000 lawyer, or whatever the situation is along those lines. So that's where I think we should be focused on efficiency, is for the benefit of providing access to justice while providing for ourselves and our family and our staff. The specifics of where that comes out, I don't know. I mean, probably it's a lack of uh, we probably don't invest in technology as much. I know right now, like AI, the stories you hear are the that one lawyer that submitted fake cases. We don't hear about the 10,000 firms that are using this properly. We don't hear about how Lexis and Westlaw have incorporated AI into real research to try and make it easier for smaller firms to find the right cases, to go through briefs, to go through all these things. So that's probably the next step, is the way that we can use technology to have David and Goliath be on a little bit more equal footing when you're a two-person PI shop going up against some 400 attorney defense firm on some sort of really serious case, something terrible that's happened. I think that's probably where we should be starting this conversation.
Yeah, you bring up some really good points because I just had a conversation with a young man, just started his law firm, and he was painting this picture to me about how he's in a small town and he just, he wants to help a lot of people. So he's got a lot of family, friends, neighbors, he's well known in the community coming to him and saying, "Hey, I need help with this, I need help with that." And they can't afford his service. His dad's a minister. He's very passionate about helping them. and he's painting this picture for me, and I basically told him, I said, look, you're going to have to separate business from charity. And not because I'm saying you shouldn't be a charitable person. I think it's amazing what you want to do. But if you try to do that from day one the way that you're doing it, you're never going to make it. You're going to be out of business in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. It will be less than 12 months. You will be out of business because you're going to be spending all your time doing charitable work. So whatever expenses you have for running your firm, all of that is not going to have enough revenue to cover it. And even if you have an investment up front, you're going to bleed through that money, you're going to run out of money, and you're going to have to close your doors. If you want to serve your community, you have to get really good at making money in your law firm so that you have the ability to serve people in the way that you want to serve them in, in that way. And I think that that's essentially what you just shared is like, if you want to provide pro bono work, low bono work, if you want to be able to help the community in that way, you have to get really, really good at having a highly successful business so that you have the bandwidth to be able to do that, so that you could dedicate some of the time of your staff to do that. Um, Another way to think about it is like, okay, when you're doing pro bono work, you're thinking, okay, I'm giving away some of my time and expertise, right? But in reality, what you're doing is you're donating the value of that time and expertise to charity, right? So what if instead of saying we do pro bono work, what if you take 10% of all of your profit and put it into a non-for-profit to pay for legal services for people who can't afford it? Then when they come to you to be a client, you charge them the regular amount you normally charge, but it comes out of your nonprofit fund that you've created. If you think of it that way, it completely changes the dynamic of how we approach what pro bono is and helps us to better understand and separate the two from each other. It's not that you shouldn't be charitable. It's that if you can't figure out how to be successful in your business and grow it, then you're going to be very limited in who you can help. If you think about it, how many people can I help in a given year? Now, what if I have 4 attorneys on staff? How many people can we collectively help in a given year? That number goes up exponentially as you grow your law firm. So if you have a vision of helping more people, have a vision of creating a bigger firm.
I mean, that's scalability. We're just applying scalability to making the world a better place instead of maximizing profit.
Absolutely. So, Jordan, you were telling me in the green room something that you're passionate about with how people use calendars to really hold themselves accountable to what they need to do in their firm, in their life, and then translate that to the team. And I I think this goes together with this whole efficiency conversation, right? Like if I want to maximize the throughput of my team, the biggest waste is going to be when time is wasted, right? So, how do I create a situation where everyone on my team is operating as efficiently as possible? And I know you have a trick to that, so I'm wondering if you can help, you know, share that now.
Sure. I mean, so look, I think a lot of people talk about this concept of living off your calendar. I know I agree with it. I just don't think we've taken it as far as possible. So, like, I have my month, my ideal month planned out, and everything that recurs in that month, whether it recurs weekly, whether it recurs once a month, that's on my calendar forever. I mean, it can get changed at any time. But if somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, I have this opportunity for you to do something in November," I can look at my calendar and say, "Well, I actually have a 2 hour block right here," instead of normally like, "Oh, it's totally open. We're 3 months out from that," instead of that concept. And the benefit of those recurring tasks like that is I'm a big proponent of like, you're not going to book everybody for 40 hours that they work 40 hours. I don't, you want to book them for 2/3, you want to book them for 3/4 of that time at most. So 25 to 30 hours. So now, when 6 months ago, a 1 hour a week client calls, which now have to be 1.5 hours because you have that many more clients, and now, document review went from 2 hours to 4 hours because you have that many more documents being reviewed. Now, as you see that creep closer and closer or above the 40 hours, now it triggers, hey, I need to hire people. And now you have that time block. Like, hey, I'm going to hire this person who's got a great personality. Everybody loves them. They're super awesome on the phone. Well, they're going to get the client check-ins. They're going to get the conversation with clients. I'm going to move this stuff to them. And so you, by having these modular work items that can move across people just as much as they move across time, that's how I think you're going to see where these efficiencies are, because you can start to see who does better at what time of day, at what type of task, at what interaction with other people. And through AI and machine learning, that's going to get even faster and faster with the feedback that we can get from this data. And I think that's how you're going to be able to maximize the efficiency of your firm while also maximizing the enjoyment of the people that work for you. Like, I'm not sitting here saying, hey, how do we crush 6 more seconds of work out of this person? I'm saying, how do we give this person more of the stuff that they already enjoy doing and that they're already good at and that they already like, so that they love coming to work just as much as you love coming to work.
I love this concept, but there's specifically two things about it that I really, really like that I want to just point out. One is the the idea, the way you painted it, we're automatically thinking about our own calendar, right? We're thinking about how we're going to modular our own calendar and how we're going to do this for ourselves. Where I think the true power is when we teach our team to do the same for their own calendar. So we're not just doing it for ourselves, but everybody on the team is doing it the same way so that we're able to have this kind of like predictive analysis always happening on our entire team's efficiency. So that may have been the way that you meant to explain it, or the way that you meant to say it, but I don't know if it was clear. So I want to just like really highlight that for our listeners. Like, when we're talking time management, we're talking about creating efficiency for yourself and also creating boundaries, right? So that you're making sure that you're doing the things you need to do. Like, hey, if you're not making time to go to the gym or to eat lunch every day, that's because you're doing a poor job in managing your calendar. This will fix that, right? This will allow you to prioritize your health and well-being above all else, when you might have struggled with it before. But now you're going to take that and translate it to your team and say, hey, this is how we're doing things from now on. You're gonna time block this for this purpose, and that's going to be perpetual, so that this way you're always making sure that you take care of it, you get it done, and you're never like, oh, I didn't have enough time to do this. The other thing that I think is really cool, and you didn't talk about the science of it, but I have a feeling that you're aware of this, and this is kind of like part of why you created it, is our brains are wired in a way that when we get into a task, we become very efficient in performing that task. But if we need to switch to do something else, there's a terminology for it. It's called context switching. And there's scientific data that shows that there's a tremendous amount of loss of productivity in our brain power and our ability to think and operate when we context switch from one thing to the next. And if you really think about it, you'll be able to see it in action just looking at one day of your life. If, let's say, you're proofing a draft, right? So you're going through and you're proofing that draft, and it's going to take you 2 hours to do. The phone rings. You answer the phone. You spend 5 minutes on the phone, but now you continue proofing the draft. How long did it take you to do that? It's not going to be 2 hours and 5 minutes. It's going to be 2 hours and 25 or 30 minutes, because that one phone call that you answered and took for 5 minutes created a situation where now you needed to get back into the work you were doing. You needed to reacclimate yourself with where you were up to. You needed to find your place. You needed to zone back into the thing you were doing. That's called context switching. And the more times that we switch our context throughout the day, the more we lose productivity. So when you start to time block for things and you do it strategically, saying, hey, I'm only doing consults or sales calls 2 days a week from this time to this time, what ends up happening is that you step into that role of salesperson and you stay there for that period of time until you're done, and you become really, really good at doing that. At the same time, you get to serve everyone else in the most efficient way possible and the best way possible, because you've separated the work that you're doing for them. I do it here with the podcast. I do podcast recording one day a month, and it's an entire day. And so I step in for that one day and I record podcasts all day long, and I don't have to worry about any of my tax clients or any of my coaching clients or anything else that I would normally be concerned about, or even sales conversations, right? Because all I'm doing for the day is I'm hanging out with amazing individuals and talking to them about their own business and their own experiences to extract the most amazing episode for you guys. But I used to have it all over the calendar. And I would show up to the call and I'd be all flustered and wondering what's going on. And, like I'm trying to get out of whatever I was just doing to get onto the conversation. And then after I wrap up the conversation, now I got to go back to what I was doing. And one podcast interview would take 3, 4 hours of my productivity away, where now I knock out 6 in a day. So, um, that is that is probably like the biggest secret to time management is understanding this concept of context switching and really overcoming it by getting super, super strategic with how you spend your time on your calendar so that the types of work that you're doing are happening in blocks.
So my favorite analogy that actually comes from one of the studies. One study found that a 10 IQ point drop up to 27 minutes after context switching. To put that in perspective, being stoned is about a 5 IQ drop. So ultimately, you trying to multitask is the equivalent is twice as bad as you just being high at work all day. And I thought that was just a fantastic way for them to frame this.
Absolutely.
And assuming if you're also high at work and you're multitasking, it's that much worse. So, you know.
Case in point, case in point. All right, Jordan, we're just about out of time, and this has been a great conversation. I really think that folks should go and pick up your book, Love Your Law Firm. But what I like to do when I close out is two things. Number one, a parting piece of advice or wisdom that you want to share with our audience. Number two, how can they learn more about you, get in touch with you, or take the next step if they're really excited or intrigued about the conversation we just had?
Sure. All right. So listen, let's sum this entire thing up into two words: be intentional. Like I think that's what all of this comes back to. Be intentional about what you're doing, be intentional about what you want, be intentional about what type of work you want to do, who you want to work with, like that whole concept. To get more in contact with me, you can go to jordanostroff.com. That's OSTROFF.com. Or you can check me out on any social media. As far as I know, there's only two Jordan Ostroffs in the world. Um, me being the one in the Hawaiian shirt, the other one being some great salesperson in Boston who gets a ton of job offers to my email. So if you are his boss, show the guy some love because people are trying to poach him because apparently he's great. So I might be the second best Jordan Ostroff in the world. We'll find out.
Love that. And yeah, Jordan's amazing. This Jordan Ostroff is amazing. Connect with him on social. You'll not only get to learn and grow your business, but you'll also get to see a firsthand look into his life and him as a dad. And I think it's really cool to watch and see happen. I strive to one day be like Jordan and share as much about my what's going on in my life and all of that with the rest of the world. It's something that I need to get better at. But folks, this was really an awesome conversation. I enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed listening to it. If you did, and this is one of your first times listening to the podcast, we'd love to have you as a subscriber, or if you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. And when you do that, you'll get notified every time we release a new episode, which we do every single week without fail. Every Thursday morning, we're dropping a new episode for you, and you'll get notified when that happens. We'd also love a rating and review if you'd love to leave one. Apple Podcasts is the biggest platform that we like to get ratings and reviews on. But whatever your podcast player is, if they have the ability to do so, a rating and review allows other people to know whether they should spend time listening to our show. So if you're enjoying it, somebody else will too and get benefit from it. And we'd love to have your feedback there. Jordan, thank you so much. We'll be in touch. And folks, take care. Just take one thing from today's episode, implement that in your firm, and you're going to be light years better than you were before listening to this. We'll see you. Take care.